this above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day, thou canst not then be false to any man. But just what is this self to which we must be true? Perhaps to discover the most satisfying answer, we must first look at Shakespeare himself, where we note, as does the Buddhist scholar David Lloyd in his book, The World is Made of Stories, that generations of literary scholars have been puzzled by Shakespeare because his plays reveal so little of himself. What were his beliefs? What were his own stories? Lloyd, in turn, earmarks the insights into this mystery of Jorge Luis Borges, which are far from insignificant. Borges says of Shakespeare, "There was no one in him, behind his face, which even through the bad paintings of those times resembles no other, and his words, which were copious, fantastic, and stormy, there was only a bit of coldness, a dream dreamt by no one." History adds that before or after dying, he found himself in the presence of God and told him, "I who have been so many in vain wish to be one, and myself." The Lord answered from a whirlwind, "Neither am I anyone. I have dreamt the world, as you dreamt your work, my Shakespeare, and among the forms in my dream are you, who, like myself, are many and one." This fits nicely with the story of Shakespeare, which my uncle told me, a story that he got from his uncle, which I no doubt will tell to my nephew one day. As descendants of the Tamil people of South India, it has to be that the original Shakespeare was a linguistic and literary Tamil genius by the name of Uluganathan Shashapat. He very quickly became known to the early European explorers who, recognizing his brilliance, decided to take him back overland to Europe. Along the arduous journey, he was captured by nomadic Arabs who inevitably renamed him Shakespeare. Both words, Sheikh and Peer, mean master, saint, Lord. Through yet more disasters, fortunes, chances, which brought him to the British Isles, Shakespeare became known as Shakespeare, the celebrated English playwright, who most certainly was a master. Of course, there are other stories that claim that he was actually Francis Bacon, the member of a secret brotherhood whose patron was the goddess Athena, goddess of knowledge, shaker of spears. Here we see how many faces fit in the face of having no face. But I digress. Do we find a story similar to my uncle's being told by Shakespeare through Othello when he's defending his love for Desdemona before the sober Venetian court? By your gracious patience, I will a round unvarnished tale deliver of my whole course of love. A father loved me, oft invited me, still questioned me the story of my life. From year to year, the battles, sieges, fortunes I had passed. I ran it through even from my boyish days to the very moment he bade me tell it, wherein I spake of most disastrous chances, of moving accidents by flood and field, of hairbreadth escapes in the imminent deadly breach, of being taken by the insolent foe and sold to slavery, of my redemption thence, and portents in my travels history, wherein of antres vast and deserts idle, rough quarries, rocks, and hills whose heads touch heaven, it was my hint to speak. Such was the process. And of the cannibals that each other eat, and men whose heads do grow beneath their shoulders. This to hear would Desdemona seriously incline, but still the house affairs would draw her thence, which ever as she could with haste dispatch, she'd come again, and with a greedy ear devour up my discourse, which I observing took once a pliant hour, and found good means to draw from her a prayer of earnest heart that I would all my pilgrimage dilate. Whereof by parcel she had something heard, but not intentively. I did consent, and often did beguile her of her tears, when I did speak of some distressful stroke my youth suffered. My story being done, she gave me for my pains a world of sighs. She swore in faith 'twas strange, 'twas passing strange, 'twas pitiful, 'twas wondrous pitiful. She wished she had not heard it, yet she wished that heaven had made her such a man. She thanked me, and bade me, if I had a friend that loved her, I should but teach him how to tell my story, and that would woo her. Upon this hint I spake. She loved me for the dangers I had passed, and I loved her that she did pity them. This only is the witchcraft I have used. Let's leave Othello here for the moment with his story, to ask the question, what is the witchcraft that Shakespeare used? Was it his own lack of identity that enabled him to create these other selves, these worlds that continue to overshadow our own? In his own words, all the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. We are such stuff as dreams are made on. So, what's the stuff of dreams? Let's look in his most celebrated work, Hamlet, a play which from the outset is framed by a most pertinent exchange high up on the battlements of Elsinore Castle. Act 1, Scene 1. Who's there? Nay, answer me! Stand and unfold yourself. And even the ghost, Hamlet's father, the old Hamlet, has a palpable substance which is extremely compelling. Imagine for a moment the glimmer of ethereal armor on the aging king who just days ago was interred and now is seen on those same battlements. Mark me. I will, Hamlet says. Pity me not, but lend thy serious hearing to what I shall unfold. I am thy father's spirit, doomed for a certain term to walk the night, and for the day confined to fasting fires, till the foul crimes done in my days of nature are purged and burnt away. But that I am forbid to tell the secrets of my prison house. I could a tale unfold whose lightest word would harrow up thy soul, freeze thy young blood, make thy two eyes, like stars, start from their spheres, thy knotted and combined locks to part, and each particular hair to stand on end, like quills upon the fretful porpentine. But this eternal blazon must not be to ears of flesh and blood. List. List. Oh, list. If thou didst ever thy dear father love, O God, revenge his foul and most unnatural murder. Murder most foul, as in the best it is. But this, most foul, strange, and unnatural, haste me to know it, that I with wings as swift as meditation or the thoughts of love may sweep to my revenge. I find thee apt. Now, Hamlet, here. 'Tis given out that sleeping in my orchard, a serpent stung me. And so the whole ear of Denmark is by a forged process of my death rankly abused. But know thou, noble youth, the serpent that did sting thy father's life now wears his crown. Oh, my prophetic soul, my uncle, I, that incestuous, that adulterate beast, with witchcraft of his wit, with traitorous gifts, oh, wicked wit and gifts that have such power so to seduce, one to his shameful lust, the will of my most seeming virtuous queen. Oh, Hamlet, what a falling off was there! But soft, methinks I scent the morning air. Brief let me be. Sleeping within my orchard, my custom always of the afternoon, upon my secure hour, thy uncle stole, and with juice of cursed Hebanon in a vial, and in the porches of my ears did pour the leprous distilment, whose effect holds such an enmity with blood of man, that swift as quicksilver it courses through the natural gates and alleys of the body, and with sudden vigor doth posset and curd, like eager droppings into milk the thin and wholesome blood. So did it mine. Thus was I, sleeping, by a brother's hand, of life, of crown, of queen, at once dispatched, cut off even in the blossoms of my sin, unhoused, disappointed, unannaled, no reckoning made, but sent to my account with all my imperfections on my head. Oh, horrible! Oh, horrible! Most horrible! If thou hast nature in thee, bear it not. Let not the royal bed of Denmark be a couch to luxury and damned incest. But howsoever thou pursuest this act, taint not thy mind, nor let thy soul contrive against thy mother aught liefer to heaven, and to those thorns that in her bosom lodge to prick and sting her. Fare thee well at once. The glowworm shows the matin to be near, and gins to pale his ineffectual fire. Adieu. Adieu, Hamlet. Remember me. Here we have a character, a ghost, who more than reflects our own sensation of reality and our apparent solidity, but they are echoes of something else. Is Shakespeare's vision of consciousness located in some supernatural state, a higher realm of truth, another world, the other side? When we look closely at Shakespeare's men and women and their utterances, we find a different hidden narrative, perhaps not all that hidden, that says, even this other world is yet another illusion created by our stories. Iago is able to spin his plausible illusions because he is aware of the creative power of story, whether true or false, as is Shakespeare. Now we left Othello having just confessed to taking Desdemona secretly to wife, and with his wonderful story, allays the fears and suspicions of the Venetian court in his blackness. He acquits himself of using witchcraft to garner her love. He retains his high standing as the foremost general of Venice and its protector. The Duke deploys him immediately to Cyprus to attend to the impending Ottoman attack. But Desdemona, with dignity, begs to remain at her husband's side. Othello entrusts her safe passage to Cyprus to Iago. Now Iago has just been passed over for promotion to lieutenant in favor of the young, handsome Florentine Cassio, and he's livid. In fact, it's through his orchestration that the secret marriage is discovered, using Rodrigo, who's also in love with Desdemona. So he tells Rodrigo to come along to Cyprus to muster all the cash he can to fund his suit to Desdemona. Put money in thy purse. Thus do I ever make my fool my purse. For I mine own gain knowledge should profane if I would time expend with such a snipe, but for my sport and profit. I hate them more. And 'tis thought abroad that twixt my sheets he has done my office. I know not if it be true, but I, for mere suspicion in that kind, will do as if for surety. He holds me well, the better shall my purpose work on him. Cassio's a proper man. Let me see now. To get his place, and to plume up my will in double knavery. How? How? After some time to abuse Othello's ear, that he's too familiar with his wife. He hath a person and a smooth disposed to be suspected, framed to make women false. Othello is of a free and open nature that thinks men honest that but seem to be so, and will as tenderly be led by the nose as an ass. I have it. It is engendered. Hell and night must bring this monstrous birth to the world's light. And events continue to fall out in accord with Iago's stories. And Iago continues to spin stories that sway perception of events. A little later on, having noticed the innocent affinity between Desdemona and Cassio, Iago manages to get Cassio drunk and into a drunken brawl with Rodrigo, who is still buying the promises of getting closer to Desdemona. Now this brawl dishonors Cassio in Othello's eyes, loses him his rank and his reputation. Iago is quick to advise Cassio that the way to Othello's good favor is through Desdemona, and so sets him at ease. And what's he then that says I play the villain, when this advice I give is free and honest, probable to thinking, and indeed the course to win the more again? Of what is most easy the inclining Desdemona to subdue in any honest suit. She's framed as fruitful as the free elements, and then for her to win the more, were it to renounce his baptism, all seals and symbols of redeeming sin, his soul is so enfettered to her love that she may make, unmake, do what she list, even as her appetite shall play the god with his weak function. How am I then the villain? To counsel Cassio to this parallel course, directly to his good. Divinity of hell! When devils will the blackest sins put on, they do suggest at first with heavenly shows, as I do now. For whilst this honest fool plies Desdemona to repay his fortunes, and she for him pleads strongly to the Moor, I'll pour this pestilence into his ear, that she repeals him for her body's lust, and by how much she strives to do him good, she'll undo her credit with the Moor. So will I turn her virtue into pitch, and by her own goodness make the net that shall enmesh them all. So, confined with such powerful storytelling, how do we untangle ourselves? Remember, Iago himself is enmeshed in an even greater story. This unfolding narrative of Shakespeare's vision of consciousness gains momentum in King Lear, where the confusion between what is real and what is not becomes the tragedy of Lear's life and the many lives around him. True sight is gained in blindness. Sanity dawns in madness. The fool is the wise seer, and nothing is what it appears to be. And nothing is what it appears to be. In Lear, we discover a paradoxical clue to the narrative of what is truly real in the resonant echoes of the word nothing. To thee and thine hereditary ever remain this ample third of our fair kingdom, no less in space, validity, and pleasure than that conferred upon Goneril. Now our joy, although last, not least, to whose young love the vines of France and milk of Burgundy strive to be interest. What can you say to draw a third more opulent than your sisters? Speak. Nothing, my lord. Nothing? Nothing. Nothing will come of nothing. Now, although Lear may be very accurate, perhaps he hasn't understood the full extent of the words he uses. In a later scene with the fool, nothing, as voiced by the fool, is an inverse mirror to Lear's suffering and confusion. Lear is driven by, and consequently suffers by, his sense of being a human thing, when nothing implies a lack which has to constantly be filled, while the fool is pointing him to his true existential state of being no thing. This is nothing, fool! Then 'tis as the breath of an unfeed lawyer. You gave me nothing for it. Can you make no use of nothing, uncle? Why, no, boy. Nothing can be made out of nothing. Ah, now, daughter, what makes that frontlet on? Methinks you are of late too much in a frown. Thou wast a pretty fellow when thou hadst no need to care for her frowning. Now art thou an O without a figure. I am better than thou art now. I am a fool, thou art nothing. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying no thing. I no thing am. We cannot ignore this vein of mirror to our human condition that runs throughout the mine of Shakespeare's work, when in his last play, The Tempest, he draws attention to the insubstantiality of all his creations. Our revels now are ended. These, our actors, as I foretold you, are melted into air, into thin air, and like the baseless fabric of this vision, the cloud-capped towers, the gorgeous palaces, solemn temples, the great globe itself, yea, all which it inherit, shall dissolve, and like this pageant, insubstantial, faded, leave not a rack behind. We are such stuff as dreams are made on, and our little life is rounded with a sleek. But what's the stuff that dreams are made on? Not of, on. What's the stuff that dreams are made on? Measure for Measure's Isabel offers an answer. But man, proud man, dressed in a little brief authority, most ignorant of what is most assured, his glassy essence, like an angry ape, plays such fantastic tricks before high heaven as make the angels weep, who with our spleens would all themselves laugh mortal. Our glassy essence. Is our glassy essence our essential no-thingness? Is it obscured by our thoughts and the stories they create? Are we hypnotized by things because we have a primary narrative that to be no thing is a kind of death and extinction which must be avoided at all costs? Are we brave enough to ask whether this is really true, the way Richard II does? I have been studying how I may compare this prison where I live unto the world. And for because the world is populous, and here is not a creature but myself, I cannot do it. Yet I'll hammer it out. My brain I'll prove the female to my soul the father, and these two beget a generation of still breeding thoughts, and these same thoughts people this little world. Inhumans like the people of this world, for no thought is contented. The better sort, as thoughts of things divine, are intermixed with scruples, which do set the word itself against the word, as thus, come little ones, and then again, it is as hard to come as for a camel to thread the postern of a small needle's eye. Thoughts tending on ambition, they do plot unlikely wonders, how these weak, vain nails may tear a passage through the flinty ribs of this hard world, my ragged prison walls, and for they cannot die in their own pride. Thoughts tending to content, they flatter themselves that they are not the first of fortune's slaves, nor shall not be the last. Like silly beggars who sitting in the stocks refuge their shame that many have and others must sit there, and in this thought they find a kind of ease, bearing their misfortunes on the back of such that have before endured the like. Thus play I, in one person, many people, and none contented. Sometimes am I king, then treasons make me wish myself a beggar, and so am I. Then crushing penury persuades me I was better when a king. Then am I kinged again, and by think I am unking by Bolingbroke, and straight am nothing. But whate'er I be, no I, nor any man that but man is, with nothing shall be pleased, till he be eased with being nothing. Music do I hear? If it be now, it is not to come. If it be not to come, it will be now. If it be not now, yet it will come. The readiness is all. The rest is silence.